Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Stephen Liu, and welcome to the podcast Getting Naked with Happiness. Getting Naked with Happiness is about sharing personal journeys that will help us to ask better questions so that we can gain clarity from these questions in building our successful and meaningful well being. So please join me, and I hope you enjoy the show. This episode is a special conversation on body work, healing, and learning how to let go of internal emotional blockages. My guest is Richard Wickes. Richard Wickes is the founder of Fascia Clinic. He is a founder of Wickes Way, and he's also an energy healer, psychology practitioner. Above all, Richard is also a grandmaster of Chinese martial arts. He used to run a Kungfu school in Germany and has won gold medals in international level competitions. He specializes in empowering people to release inner blockages so that they can help themselves and their families. So please join me to welcome Richard Wickes to the show. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Hi, nice to see you.
Great to see you, Richard. Richard, can you share with us your background in reference to psychology, Taichi, and Kungfu?
I learned Kungfu in the UK when I was after being beaten up by skinheads, and it inspired me so much. I followed a little road with the group to learn up to a black belt level. I was inspired to go out and visit Asia, and I went in 1989, traveled through Asia, and I eventually ended up going to Chengdu, and I met a Taoist master. And this Taoist master was, he was doing something called, at the time, a Taichi Men Qigong, which was actually he developed the name because in China at the time there was this opening policy where they were allowing a lot of new things, and Qigong was allowed. But he wasn't sure if Tai Chi would be allowed. So he said, okay, this is Qigong. And at the time, that was a good idea. And actually what I learned, it was actually Tai Chi. So it was Tai Chi practice without any martial practice attached to it. And Tai Chi practice is effortlessness practice. And after practicing that, for 3 days, I started to feel the energy outside my body. So it's, I think, what the Hindus call siddhis. So you start to have whether you have seeing energy or feeling energy or hearing things, these are like strange phenomena. Now, my teacher, his name was Lu Jinchuan. He was very much a traditional guy. He was a professor at Haidan University in Beijing. Strong background in the martial arts and everything else. But he was running a clinic, and the clinic was called The Last Bus Stop.
The name of the clinic is The Last Bus Stop.
Well, that was the nickname, yeah, because
Wow.
it was basically, if you had a terminal sickness, you could get off the bus to the cemetery at his clinic, and he would cure you, because he was just incredible. But he didn't use any pharmaceutical medicines. None of the traditional Chinese medicine potions. He would use qi, and he would use qi needles, which was a totally distinctive type of acupuncture. And then when I met Lu Jinchuan, he offered to teach me. And after this 3 days, I felt the energy. And then I was kind of screwed because I was feeling something that nobody else felt. And I felt like I had sort of left society in a way, because you know what I mean? It's like everybody's colorblind, and I can see color. And I can say, can you see that's blue? And they go, no, it's gray to me. They say, no, it's definitely blue. Except when I was in the clinic. In the clinic, everybody go, yeah, it's blue. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're right. So I had this, as a young man, I had this like big break in my social world, because I had people that knew what I was talking about and people who didn't have a clue. And I very quickly realized that if I went back into normal society, I went back and I said, okay, well, I need to do something to integrate this. I learned Chinese first of all, and I went back and studied with him for about three years in China, and then I left China once he said I was qualified to teach, and I went to Germany. And in Germany, my teacher, Lu Juntran, appeared in Germany. Whoa. And so it's ridiculous, isn't it? You think this can't be possible. And I remember meeting him for the first time when he came in on the train from Munich. He was doing a symposium, and he came in on the first time into the Karlsruhe main station. And I walked up the station and stood waiting for the train, not knowing where he was coming. And the train arrived, and he arrived exactly where I was standing. So the door opened, and he steps out exactly at that point. You're going, wow, this is kind of freaky.
In a good way.
Yeah, it's freaky in a good way, because I wasn't planning to do this. Yeah, I wasn't going, okay, I'm going to follow the energy, Luke. Nothing like that. I was just like, okay, this is a good place to stand.
Thank you, Richard, for sharing that experience. And you have taught Taichi and Kungfu for this period of time, and you have also been a practitioner for 35 years, and you combine psychology and Taichi and other healing methods to help people to clear their blockages.
Yeah.
I remember some years ago, you created a healing method that helped people to overcome pain. And I have been watching some of your videos, I remember.
Okay.
And this seems to be really effective. And many have said that your method of healing has helped them tremendously. And one of your patients even reported that his pain disappeared in less than 5 minutes. So on this note, can you share with us more about this method that you have created?
The idea of the method goes back to Taichi, and essentially, if we bring everything back to the oneness, if we're in oneness, then that is healing. And when we're out of oneness, then we're in pain. And Chinese medicine says something like, if something is blocked, you'll find pain. If it's flowing, there'll be no pain. So what we're trying to do, and that's in a way that's saying exactly the same thing. So all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reconnect people back to their oneness. And interestingly, the word healing comes back to this word of making whole. So heal and whole are a similar root. Anything that's not flowing or where we're disconnected is causing problems, and then we can apply that in our business, in our emotional lives, in our relationships, in our physical bodies.
I just want to quickly add that I have came across your method on the internet based on the videos that I have seen, and it's called, for those who are listening in, the method is known as Wickes Way. It's WICKES WAY. As from time to time, sometimes I do experience aches in my shoulders and neck area. Yeah. And this is a common symptom in a fast-paced society that we live in. Inevitably, we hold some of these stresses in our body unconsciously, and the body pain is manifested especially when we get stressed or we are exposed to some sort of internal or external triggers. And these triggers could be trauma, depression, or anxiety, or fear.
Often people feel tension in the neck, and it's related to the gut. And the reason for that is there's a connection between the muscle at the neck, the trapezius muscle, which is supplied by, if you remember your neuroanatomy, by the accessorius nerve, to the vagus nerve, which comes from the emotional brain and goes to the gut. And so very often I have people who are stressed because their gut is not okay. And that's why I'm trying to say it should be an integrated approach. People are stressed and they think, wow, I'm not capable because of some problem of dealing with my issues. But I go, well, actually, your gut is not okay. You actually just need help with your gut, and then you'll be able to deal with things. That will help you with your resilience. But it isn't always that way around. It's like yin and yang. Sometimes it's like that, and sometimes it's some trauma or some emotional upset.
In reference to this, can you share with us a personal experience that is related to pain and suffering, And what have you gone through and learned from it?
So for me, I mean, I went through the most incredible experience with Emma dying. I think that was probably has been the most traumatic and difficult to deal with experience. And I mean, I'm still dealing with it. I don't think I'm over it. So Emma died 4 years ago. She took her life. She was 21, and it's it's very. I like to speak about it, and the reason I like to speak about it is because if I don't, then I feel that people won't learn from it. And I think I don't think Emma necessarily needed to die. I've heard various spiritual people tell me that, you know, she was a master. She'd done everything she was supposed to do, and, you know, she was ready, and she made a conscious decision to go, and I have to accept it. But I felt that there were definite signals that could have been picked up on, and one of them was really, I would say, this idea that when we are depressed, at least in my family, if you've got a mental problem or you're struggling, then the best thing you can do is not tell anybody and pretend everything is fine and smile. Yeah. So I think I think I've forgotten your question, Stefan. So
No,
I'm just
okay.
chatting on. Yeah.
No,
I'm just babbling on.
No, that was great, Richard. Because I asked about your personal experience, how it was related to pain and suffering, and you spoke about your daughter Emma.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you
I mean,
think
it just I remember this point where, you know, very very quickly after she died, I'm the grief when people say, can you imagine what it's like? People say the stupidest things when you're grieving. So one is, how are you doing? Which I mean, I know people mean well, or, you know, but you really don't even want to think about how you're doing. Does that make sense? Like, you don't want to check in with how you're doing because you're going that badly. Not thinking about it is probably the best thing you can do, because breaking down on the spot is not what you want to do, because you're trying to just go and eat something or something. So I had this period where I cried so much that I was getting out to eat for about an hour a day, and then I was spending the rest of the time in crying and then sleeping. I thought, well, I'm on my own in Hong Kong. This is not a good situation. What can I do? And I had this idea to make a little dream journey. You know, like you hear these stories where somebody's telling you, and you imagine you are da da da. Anyway, so I said, okay, I'm going to go on this owl, because Emma and we had this connection with the image of owls. And so an owl is going to take me, and part of me, this is again a Chinese idea, a soul part has split off and it's gone to be with Emma, but I'm not going to be able to survive if part of my soul is away. So we flew and flew and flew. I was on the back of this owl, flying into where, I don't know how long. This was just in a meditation posture. I was just imagining I was doing this. And then I arrived in this place, and there was this little black blob on the ground, and that was that part of me. So we picked it up in the beak, and we flew back, and it was very heavy, but we managed to fly back. And I stopped crying. So once we got back, I stopped crying. And for the next 3 or 4 days, when I fell asleep, I cried in my dreams all the way through the night. So from the moment I closed my eyes, I was crying, but I wasn't crying physically. And I wake up, and I was still, during the day, I didn't need to physically cry. And I realized this was a very powerful exercise that I'd done that had really, really made an enormous difference to me, and probably saved my life, because I don't know where I'd have been if I was literally wasting away at the time. I wasn't able to eat, not really. And I was using way too much physical energy there, and that was very painful. But I think that's the other thing that's really helped me is connecting with spirit. So although we then tend, as a psychologist, I mean, I've got a degree in psychology, and psychology, we can't really explain these things. Sadly, we do study them, but the connection with spirit made an enormous difference to me.
Is it possible to share with us a little bit about Emma and what happened to Emma?
Well, so Emma was this most beautiful, beautiful baby, and she was a very wonderful girl growing up. Very, very strong-minded, independent, very caring, very sensitive girl. She went traveling very young. She did a lot of traveling through Europe on her own, independently from the age of about 15, going with older boys. We said okay, you want to go? That's all right. And she traveled eventually. When she was 18, she started traveling around Europe and even in Asia and so on. So she had this enormously packed life that she was leading. She got into university in Germany, which is no mean feat. When she went to university, she was struggling. So she was struggling. She moved into a commune where they weren't they didn't really integrate her. She didn't really feel like she connected there. She wasn't enjoying her class. And then she had she had a boyfriend, and he was a psychologist, and he said, and there is no such thing as energy. We're just physical beings, and there's nothing else. And she bought into that. But she had this crisis moment. I spoke to her 2 days before she killed herself. And she had this crisis moment where he said he wanted to marry her and be with her forever. And she's 21, and she's like, well, I don't know about that. And she was totally in love with him. But then she said, I don't know about that. So he said, oh, in that case, I'll finish it. And I think that, along with not being happy, and she was working in she had a side job, working with a very depressed, negative lady, disabled person. And I don't think she realized how much energy that costs. And I think she just had this dark night of the soul, and it was too dark for her. And she said, I've got her suicide note, and I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live anymore. And she took her life. And I've been in these moments where you don't want to live anymore. And what I've always found is that the reasons that I haven't want to live are just nonsense. In each moment, the world is enough. Everything's enough in each moment. That's what happened to me. And I did remember telling her, I said, I've had these moments, and if you let go of whatever you're thinking at that moment, you can. An enormous peace has come on me, enormous peace, and I felt that when I heard it. So the story goes, I know it's not background, but the story goes, I got the call that Emma had killed herself from her mum, and I couldn't believe it. And one of the first things that I heard said to me in a very spiritual way was, "Daddy, energy is real." And I said back to her, "Of course it's real." And I know this is a conversation which is happening in my psyche. But in that moment, I felt, well, I know it's real. I've had so many experiences of it being real, and she didn't know. She thought by killing herself, she was going to solve all her problems and avoid all her suffering. And in fact, that's not the case. That's not my experience. I would say that is an incorrect assumption. And so a lot of that really sort of pushed me more to say, look, I've got to stand up for my perception and what I feel, and get more and be more real about energy myself and not be quite so shy.
What happened to you after Emma's suicide?
I cancelled everything. That's what happened to me. I cancelled everything, and I thought, well, I've got to get over this. I need help. So I booked in with a therapist immediately. Actually, it was I didn't do psychotherapy. I booked in with a wise lady. So, and we did some journeying, and I was sort of okay a bit. But what I didn't realize is grief is a long process. Grief is not a 2-month, 3-month, 6-month process. Grief can take years. And so initially I was feeling, well, I'm pretty good. I continued doing as much work as I could. And there was a very much like a downward slope where I was just, it was like I was, there was a hole in the boat, I was thinking. And despite knowing that, I was thinking and knowing I was still trying to do everything I wanted to do. So I really worked with energy coaches. I did spiritual healing, and I did a lot of what really helped me was meeting up with people. So I start to just try and meet up with people because we know depression is definitely got to do with social isolation. And I thought, okay, I need to meet up with people. And one good thing that happened to me, it sounds like a sort of a silver lining on a shadow,
silver lining
on a dark cloud. But was I could not hide my feelings. I had no ability to hide my feelings. So if it came up, the grief that wanted to come up, it just came up, and it came up with a vengeance wherever I was at any point. And I was like, okay, whatever, just come, bring it on. I don't want to repeat this mistake that in a way was taught to me by my family, stiff upper lip of trying to say everything's fine. I can cope with everything. That was one of the things, the market things. And I finished my psychology degree. That was one of the things I did in the summer, is I managed to finish my psychology degree. Which
Congratulations. Yes, Richard. And I really appreciate your courage in being so naked emotionally and mentally.
You've got your video on, so you can see how naked I actually am.
Thank you. It takes a higher level of self-awareness to be this vulnerable and authentic. By talking about this, it means a lot to me and us, for those who are listening in. And it's really challenging to talk about the loss of a child or any loved ones. Depression and suicide is not just an event. It is a condition that can affect anyone, any parent, husband or wife, teacher or student, adult or child. Whether you're mentally strong, it can still happen to literally anyone. If you can offer a piece of advice to those who are suffering from depression or stressful situations, what would that be?
Okay, there's two things. One is suicide, like Emma's. It comes like a tornado. It's so the force of nature metaphor is when it comes like it comes for Emma. I don't know if I could have withstood it. So if it's going to happen, if it comes to you like that, the one piece of advice that is given is find somebody to be with. Do not be alone. You need to just hang on for that until the earthquake, the tornado, the tsunami is over. So if you're in that state, it's a 999 call. You need to get to safety. You need a rock, whether the rock is a person or it's the hospital or whatever. It's a temporary situation. As I don't know if you heard of Richard Bandler. Richard Bandler would always say, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. which is funny, except when you've actually experienced it, you feel like a bit stupid. But and the depression, I think, like you said, like getting naked with it. Like, yeah, I suffer with depression. It took me a year, believe it or not, over a year to even own up. I think maybe 2 years before I even owned up that I have a depression, because I needed to be okay. So I need to be okay socially, and the stigma about depression was so much. Even about owning up that my daughter had committed suicide, it was my dark secret. So I came out on the web and said, like, no, I need to talk about it. And the only reason I need to talk about it is because it's killing kids. This kind of behavior is killing people. And this kind of behavior is also causing more depression. So I work with Mind Hong Kong as a volunteer and an advocate for mental health to try and fight the stigma. And I feel that one thing they do is they do these mental health first aid classes, and I train those as well. And with that class, they're talking about the earlier you can realize you've got a problem, the earlier you can start doing something about it. Now, personally, they talk about evidence-based approaches, which I don't actually, I don't necessarily think that they're the approaches that I would necessarily take, because I find my personal anecdotal experiences with my Taichi master and so on have been so incredible. But there is one thing, and that is get yourself moving. Physically move. Some sort of exercise is probably the best thing you can do. The second thing is remember spirit. Spirit is real. And get out and see people. Just say, if they say you want to meet, why do you want to meet? You say, well, I just want to meet. That's all. I just don't want to be alone right now. And that's a good enough reason. And finally, I feel that checking your diet is really important. So there's definitely one of the amazing things that happened to me. I was working with a lady in Canada called Julie Shibanovsky, who's a brain health coach who's done a lot on the brain. I went to visit her, and she said, "Hey, Richard, you should take this supplement. This would be really good for your brain." And so I looked at it as very much like an organic problem, and I said, "Okay, my brain needs this." So actually, that is one of the things that I did. Is I heard that people that suffer trauma and depression are going to have brain damage, certain amount of brain damage coming from that. So I immediately started taking supplements. Once I'd heard Emma had died, I said, okay, I'm going to take vitamin B complex, zinc, and the essential fatty acids. So I actually said, I need to do something physically to try and protect myself and buffer my brain.
By sharing this, you have shared how you cope with the suffering that followed, and you went from a place of darkness and into the place of healing and growth. You climb out the hole, and by climbing out that hole, you share with us your experience, your learnings. Can you share one daily practice or habit that contributes to your well-being?
Yeah, let me think. I think standing is pretty good.
Standing.
Yeah, I know it's it's very zen to say, yeah, I like standing, but it means a lot of people do their mindfulness in sitting, and my teacher would always say, well, you're pressing on your pelvic floor, and that's not good for your prostate, and so on. So it's better to do your mindfulness in any kind of practice. It's more healthy for you to do it in standing. He said you can move to sitting, but you should always start with standing. And one thing that I do is I'll stand and relax before I start my Tai Chi, and that's very much a related practice. It's related to this effortlessness practice of Wu Wei. So standing is probably the thing I'd say to people is stand and just relax and just allow yourself to relax. And if you could do it for 5 minutes, then see if you can stretch for 10 minutes and then eventually stretch it to half an hour. That'd be good. Is there anything you should be doing? No, you just stand and relax. That would be already very, very good. Yeah.
Great.
Because if you stand, you're going to allow your spine to elongate, actually.
And standing is better than sitting because it stretches the spine. Is there any sort of timing or recommendation of how long should we stand or should one stand in a day? Is there any specific recommendation?
Well, because standing is such a innocuous practice, we can stand at any time during the day. So if there's a practice, it's why don't you just, whenever you're standing for the MTR or standing for the BTS or standing for the whatever it is, the London Underground or wherever you are, you just take a moment to just relax in that moment. So with the Chinese, they if you want to stretch the spine, you'll pull yourself up from the top of your head and draw in your chin, and then you relax, and that'll expand the spine. But really the benefit is sort of over sitting, because sitting is going to squash your pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor is if you look at the very delicate organs which are in there for the woman and for the man, it's under an enormous amount of pressure. And then we sit on it, and they say sitting is the new smoking, don't they?
Sitting is the new smoking.
That's what they say. Yeah, it's sort of not great for the kidneys and so on. It's like we sit too much. So standing, if you could stand correctly and relax, you're allowing your energy and your body to just line up, and that's going to be good. So I'd just say, like, if you just become more aware of your standing, that would be very cool.
So Richard, thank you for that tip. And if people want to reach out to you, how can they do so? And is there any upcoming training that you will be conducting for the Wickes healing method?
Yeah, I'm doing a teacher training in Taiwan for Wickes Way, which everybody is welcome to. And I'm doing, I might be doing one in India as well. We're going to see if that's more the body integration work, Wickes body integration. Definitely contactable over my email address, which is richwicks@gmail.com. wicksway@gmail.com as well.
Okay, great. So it'll be Wickes Way, WICKES WAY. Before we close the show, I would like to acknowledge your dedication and mission to spreading healing and resilience to the world. To me, resilience and healing is an important skill that everyone needs to learn, know, and to build on. So Richard, thank you for being on the show. Getting Naked with Happiness is about sharing journeys of mental and emotional vulnerability so that we can learn to help each other to grow. And thank you for being part of this journey with us. Thank you.
Good. All right. Have a great day.
For those who are listening in, for me, my biggest takeaway from this conversation with Richard is to stand and relaxed. And apart from that, if you are feeling down or stressed, do speak out about your feelings by speaking up, or maybe you can notice others around you who needs to speak up. Do approach them so that we could help ourselves and each other to overcome the victim mindset, and it's so that we can feel safe to move towards the path of healing. For those who are listening in, I would like to hear your thoughts on how you can alleviate suffering and increase your resilience to develop a better well-being. Do share your comments in the Facebook page, Getting Naked with Happiness, or Instagram, #Getting Naked with Happiness. Thank you for listening, and have a great week of resilience, positive human connections, and fulfillment ahead. Thank you.